Joining me this week is a comedian, an actress, an author, an activist, and a Grammy and Emmy nominee, Margaret Cho. Welcome to the Rubin Report.
Thank you.
Which of those things do you like first? I feel like most comedians like comic first.
Yeah, comic. And then you could just say comic.
Period.
Like it's all, yeah, I just do comedy. Other projects, I'll do acting stuff, but it's usually comedic roles. My music and all that stuff is comedy. My writing is usually comedy, so comic usually covers it.
Yeah. Is there anything that in this wild biz of Hollywood that you haven't done? I mean, even just looking at your Wikipedia before, you've pretty much, like reality TV, sitcom, I mean, you've pretty much done everything that one can do in this biz.
I haven't judged, I've judged RuPaul's Drag Race, but I haven't judged like an X Factor or American Idol or like The Voice,
right?
That kind of thing.
Would you do like a Last Comic Standing? Would you judge other comics? Do you think that would be? You think it would be fun? I
think that would be cool. Although I'm not 100% sure it's an art form you can judge against. The comedy's very much, it's about going after a particular audience. So you can't really sort of judge overall criteria as you could say an Olympic sport. It's very different.
Right. Would you be afraid of like crushing a young comic's dreams? Because a lot of these comics, they don't know what they're doing at 8. You could be horrible at 18, but amazing when you're 40.
It takes a while. It's a journey. And I think you just get better with time. In general, most comics really flourish over the years. And so, I don't know, like you never want to be very critical. I never am, of people who are just starting out, because you want to give them some space to grow and to fly.
Yeah. So I want to talk a bit about your comedy and your history and all that. So let's start with your personal history. Mm-hmm. You grew up in San Francisco.
Yes.
Parents were first-generation immigrants, right?
I'm confused by the whole first generation, second generation. So they came from Korea.
Right, so they're first generation in the United States, yeah.
And then, so I'm second?
So you're technically second, unless there's something that I don't know.
No, I mean, I was born here.
Yeah.
Doesn't that make me first?
I guess you were the first born here.
Yeah, so I think I'm first. So I don't know.
Well, we're in a lot of trouble. I know, well, don't worry, the YouTube comments will clear this up for us. Don't worry about that. All right, but your parents came here, you were born here, but you grew up in a really interesting part of San Francisco at a sort of interesting time. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I grew up in the 70s in the Haight-Ashbury, which was very sort of burnout from the 60s. There's a lot of burnout. There's also this huge influx of punk rock, which is just starting to happen. My parents had a bookstore in the Polk district, which was the big gay neighborhood. Before the Castro, it was Polk. Mm-hmm. And so they had a gay bookstore in the middle of that neighborhood. So I grew up around a lot of different influences, both sort of rock and roll and punk rock, and also from the gay world there. So it was a cool place to grow up, for sure.
Yeah. How did your parents, so they were the first immigrants, let's say, whether that's first or second, whatever, but how did they end up with a gay bookstore?
They bought it. They wanted to buy a bookstore in a very cosmopolitan area. This was a world that they felt like they didn't know anything about, and they were excited about it. They wanted to be a part of it. And certainly the bookstore was this crossroads of a lot of different worlds, all kind of pertaining to literature and art and music. And like there was book signings by Armistead Maupin there, who wrote Tales of the City. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of people meeting there and hanging out. It was social media before social media. People would check into the bookstore.
Right. It was actual social media. Yeah, before it was all on the phone. Do you think there was something really special about that time there? I mean, even hearing about a gay part of San Francisco before the Castro, it's sort of like, I didn't even know that really existed.
Yeah, it was there, and it was a very difficult time because in the 80s, that's when AIDS really hit that community hard, and so you really saw the devastation firsthand, and that was a really sad thing to witness and grow up in. I know that a lot of the people around there didn't make it, and because that was the community that was first hit by AIDS, like very strongly. Of course, there's New York, but then San Francisco really felt it, and it was really, really hard.
Yeah. For you growing up, so your family, they owned a business, but you were still sort of the other, which I think has sort of been like a theme throughout your life. Do you sort of, from being Asian to being LGBT, are you bisexual? Is that even like, I'm so tired of labels all the time, it like seems silly to have to ask.
Yeah, I'm bisexual, but I think even that sort of makes you other within the gay community, because there's not as large of a sort of a voice for the bisexual community, and so it seems like it's growing, but it was very new when I was young, certainly. Yeah.
So then you started doing stand-up, and you eventually got a sitcom on ABC, All American Girl. I remember watching it. I think I watched the first episode. What year was that?
1994.
94. So that seems like another lifetime ago.
A long time
probably.
ago.
And the reason I wanted to focus on it a little bit is because it to me, it captures so much of what's going on in the country right now with identity politics and outrage and stereotyping and all of this stuff. So ABC comes to you, they say, all right, we like your stand-up, we're gonna give you a sitcom. What's that process like?
Well, it was like this very, very big deal, because they were doing that. Like, a lot of sitcoms were based on stand-up comics. Like there was a huge amount of success around Seinfeld and Roseanne, of course, and then Tim Allen, which was R&R Network. And so, it was about developing with somebody, and, he didn't really sort of take my stand-up and use that as material in the show, because my stand-up comedy was so risque and so out there. There was no way to fit it into the sitcom format. We were in the 8 o'clock hour. It was a family show. And so I was just trying to make that work, but I'm really proud of the show. I felt like we did a lot of great things. And, we had a lot of issues with the Korean community at the time, because the LA riots had just happened. So the Korean community were incredibly, intensely sensitive about their portrayal in any way. And I think they didn't like the fact that I was a woman. They didn't like the fact that I was this dirty comic. They didn't like the fact that I was kind of talking about this Americanized vision of a Korean family. And so this is where we butt heads a lot. I mean, but what was great is there was a whole generation of young people who got to see Asians on TV for the first time. And that was really what had sort of the lasting reach of the show.
So is that like the ultimate irony of doing stand-up, sort of, is like you do this act, you hone this act, you were dirty and raunchy and telling your truth as it is, then you have to go through like the cookie cutter machine of ABC, they kind of clean it up, and then still, to a certain percentage of the Korean community, they're going, well, she doesn't maybe look exactly like we want. I read something about how one of the executives wanted you to, they thought your face was too round. I mean, really crazy stuff.
I just had all these problems, but it ultimately kind of came down to people needing to constantly create sort of critiques about it, because they'd never seen an Asian American family on TV before. And it was so hard. But, what happened was the show was on for a year, and then it was canceled, but the resounding power of it, it's still like had people thinking, we'd love to see this again, we'd love to see another Asian American family. Unfortunately, it didn't happen until just recently with Fresh Off the
like
Boat.
a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there things that you maybe would have done differently, do you think? Or do you think it was just the timing of everything just sort of made it that?
The timing of it was really hard. I don't know what I could have done differently. I mean, I really don't. Like, I have no sense of what I could have done. Yeah. But what's great is the show had a long legacy, and we see it today in Fresh Off the Boat, or Dr. Ken, or Kim's Convenience, which is a show that's in Canada right now, which is all about an Asian American family there too, which is really, or Asian Canadian family, Asian North American family. So it's
Isn't
great.
it crazy how we get so lost in these words? Like, even as you're saying that, not American, they're Canadian. Like, everyone.
They are Canadian. Yeah.
How is that though for for you, like you've been part of what people just get outraged all the time about everything. Do you have to watch your words sometimes? You don't really watch your words, I don't think.
I don't really think about it. I mean, I just want to do comedy, and comedy in itself is a noble art form. There's like this sense of you're just trying to make people laugh, and there's got to be something very valiant about that. And so I don't really question it too much.
Yeah. Who were your comic heroes when you were growing up?
I love Joan Rivers, just the best.
Yeah. Don't we desperately need her now? She's one of
Yeah.
her and Carlin all the time. I'm always like, God, in these days we
Yeah.
need them.
And Richard Pryor.
And Pryor,
for
yeah.
sure. I love all of them. Robin Williams, also incredible. I saw him a lot, and I love him. He was the best. But Joan Rivers certainly paved the way for all women, and really was a very good mentor for me, a very good friend.
Yeah. You think certain comics, they just sort of have to take it on the chin to make change happen? Like Joan sort of had to take it as a woman and mock herself as a woman, her looks and things like that. And even what you had to do with your show, like in a way, you had to do that. Like somebody has to sort of be thrown under the bus in a weird way to get things to change.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but with Joan, it was incredible because her trajectory through show business was so varied. When she started doing comedy on TV, she couldn't talk about the fact that she was pregnant.
Yeah.
Like that was a real taboo.
Yeah.
And then juxtaposed with her nightclub act, which was as dirty as can be. Like, even when I would go see her, I would be blushing. Like, it's hard to make me offended. I was like, that's offensive.
Right.
But I love that about her. I love being offended by her continually over our long friendship. It was the best.
Yeah. Is there anything that's too raunchy for you or too politically incorrect or any of that stuff?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean,
I saw you do stand up in I think Atlantic City.
Okay.
Sandra Bernhard was opening for you.
Oh yeah, she's great.
And I love her. And you did a whole thing about drinking olive oil and how it took care of business.
It's all that to me is very basic humor. Like it's like very any sort of digestive anything is hilarious. But I'll just sort of do whatever, but I love comics who can offend me. That's the best feeling.
Yeah. Why are people so offended though all the time? Like you're offended for the right reason. You're like,
I
like
love it. I'm like, how dare you? Ah.
Yeah. What happened though that where people think that somehow words are going to destroy them? That's what I think we're at right now.
I don't know. There is some truth in that words hate speech can be harmful, and that certain ideas, when you diminish human beings and sort of talk about them in a way that's dehumanizing, there is a lasting effect to that. And certainly, so language can be powerful in that regard. But at the same time, when you're just having fun, and it's just comics having fun, I think, I don't know, I always sort of enjoy that more than my tendency to want to be offended.
Yeah. Do you think that phones changed the stand-up thing? Because I know from when I started stand-up, like nobody had a phone in a room, right? Nobody was recording you the whole time, or half the time just looking down and not paying attention. But that anything you say in stand-up, where it should be the most rawest form of what you do, and you're playing with it to perfect it. That now people can be recording you. Does that ever happen to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it does. I don't really care. I mean, I maintain a high standard as much as I can. And I do shows like every day, like multiple times a day. I'm very invested in the art form. It's very important to me. But sometimes people record. Sometimes people aren't paying attention, which is more offensive than recording.
It's like you're killing and there's one guy looking at his phone and that's what you focus on.
It's so weird because you just see this blue light. And I don't care. It's their loss. It's not important to me whether they witness what I'm doing or not. But it used to be where you could sort of say anything and get away with anything. And, there's so no witnesses, but there's always witnesses. So I don't know.
So just let's shift a little bit to some stuff that's going on right now. So you had this email exchange with Tilda Swinton. Mm-hmm. Do you want to just kind of explain what happened so that I don't put words into your mouth?
So Alex Borstein, who plays Mrs. Swan
Yeah.
on Mad TV, connected me and Tilda because she wanted to talk about Doctor Strange because she was playing an Asian role.
Yeah.
And I just was trying to sort of break it down like, well, people are angry because they feel that Asian actors should play Asian roles because this is something that's been going on forever in Hollywood. So we just talked about it, and then I talked about it on Bobby Lee's podcast, who's a friend of Alex's and mine, and so we're talking about it. And so then she sort of posted all of the emails, which just sort of illustrates our conversation, how it really, I don't know if I felt like very weird, like, why are you asking me about this? It's like almost like I can't really back you up on this decision to play this role. Like I don't know what to say to somebody who doesn't accept or doesn't understand the idea of whitewashing or that you're part of the problem. And
so whitewashing, for people that don't know, is basically when they have a white actor playing
an Asian role.
Yeah.
Because there's so few roles for Asian actors, and I would really hope that we would get to play ourselves at the very least.
Yeah. So without getting into the minutia, because I read the exchange and I actually didn't think it wasn't hostile in any way. I thought you were both being totally respectful of each other. Maybe you were slightly missing some, innuendo or whatever. In terms of just the acting and all of that, how important do you think visibility is actually?
It is. It's hugely important. I mean, it's hugely important, and it's like there's just really no sense of real respect for Asian actors or an Asian audience or even any audience who would prefer to see an Asian character be played by an Asian actor. That's like just very normal to me. We don't accept blackface in any of its forms in film or television. Why would we accept yellowface? It seems to be happening continually.
Yeah. So when I was doing a little research on this, I kept partly thinking that in a weird way, when people think of the Asian community, whatever that is, they think, well, they're focused on education, they're focused on work. That would sort of be the better way to go about doing things, right? Not to say that exposure isn't important too, but that the community itself is sort of focused on the right things of how to become successful. Does that make sense?
Or they're focused on arenas where they've seen other Asian Americans achieve success. That's
interesting.
That's where we need to shift things and allow people to be able to be themselves.
Yeah.
And involvement in the arts is very important, and diversity in the arts exists. It's just the powers that be who control the sort of the purse strings for the large productions don't necessarily think diversity is anything they should pay attention to. And they're seeing now with the advent of social media that they have to pay attention to it.
Yeah. How much of an agenda do you think Hollywood has? I always think, like, at the end of the day, they're really just a business, right? Do you think they really make decisions based on gender and color and all that, like really like consciously? I know you can't, it's hard to do a blanket.
No, but they need to now, because the thing about it is there used to be a disconnection between what happens on social media and who buys tickets, and now we know that social media is exactly what drives who buys the tickets and why they're buying the tickets and what they're going to see.
Yeah.
So I think diversity has a very, very big part in the conversation of what we're going to see in film now. And I love that.
Yeah. So how much time do you devote to social media in general? I mean, I see you tweet a bunch and stuff like that, but is it like consuming for you? That's a theme with a lot of my guests. Like, it's like taking over the real life.
No, I live without any of that. I mean, I'm very involved in my actual like real time life.
Like actual life, like real life, yeah.
I very much limit my sort of my time on my devices.
Yeah.
You know, because I can get so into it, and it's really overwhelming. And then when you're like troll fighting and
Yeah, how do you deal with that kind of stuff?
I don't look at it anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't care because it's not important to me. Like, I just have no reason to want to go after people like that because I have in the past, and then I've had other people who were backing me up, and then it became a whole thing that I don't know why this is a fight. You know, this is not
Yeah.
what my intention is. I just want to be a comedian.
Yeah.
So it's like not interesting to
Right,
me.
and it's sort of like you can't win, right? Like you
No.
can't get into a fight with the troll and come out at the end. Either you've mocked them, and then it's like, Margaret Cho is mocking a troll, or you just end up wasting your energy with them. So there's
Yeah.
no end game there that's a win.
No, there's no win. You know, it's just kind of weird.